Today, I want to talk about overwhelm, and I want to talk about how frustrating it can be as a creative, specifically as a writer, to deal with. If you're new to the channel, my name is Seth. I've recently been pretty sick, and so that's why my voice sounds like this, and I'll probably stop a bunch of times during this video to die of coughing. So, if you see me die during this video, that's a small glimpse. Don't worry about it too much. I'll be fine. But yeah, I want to talk about overwhelm and what it can do to our creative process. I am once again sitting down because I have no energy. And I have no energy because I've been sick. And I got sick, I really think, because I was overwhelmed. My immune system is usually really good. I grew up in West Africa, which certainly helped out. I ate dirt as a kid, also helped out. One of my brothers tried to convince me that I could grow an orange tree out of my mouth if I swallowed a seed and then some dirt, drank some water, and walked around outside with my mouth open to face the sun. I think I lasted about 15 minutes before getting a little bit bored and deciding to go off and try something else. I was full of crazy schemes as a kid. I'm probably still full of crazy schemes, but one of the things that would often happen to me as a child is that I would become overwhelmed and, as a result, paralyzed by everything going on around me. And from that paralysis, I learned a lot of really important skills. I learned how to observe. I learned how to really quickly shift my thoughts. I learned how to distract myself, even when there was nothing to do. I learned how to deal with boredom. I learned how to fill my mind with creative things. All of those are skills that I now use as a writer. But every once in a while, my skills or my coping mechanisms don't quite work. And I find myself in the state of overwhelm, where there is simply too much going on. Or at least there are too many thoughts in my head. Because being overwhelmed is always a matter of perspective. And that's sort of what I want to talk about. I think that creatives are particularly vulnerable to that state of overwhelm, especially when we are dealing with producing creative work. Especially when we're dealing with building something that is large and hard to build. So a novel, for instance, is large. It takes a lot of words to write a novel, and it is hard to do. And no matter how many times you do it, it remains hard, at least if you want to do it well. There are points in our creative life where we can tell that we are operating at the sort of edge of our creative abilities. And we feel great. It's like we're a surfer and we're riding the wave. And if you hit that sweet spot, you can get a great ride. The writing of your story, the writing of your novel can be just such a magical experience. And then there are days when we get in the water, to continue with our surfing analogy. There are days when we get into the water and it's cold and the wind is bitter and the waves suck and we just cannot, for the life of us, catch a good enough wave to take us into shore. And so we paddle out and we try And the waves either aren't big enough, or we caught them at the wrong time, or our starting places isn't in the right spot. Any number of reasons. And so we struggle to get up on that board, and we struggle to get that ride. Even though we know exactly how awesome it is, exactly what it feels like. And actually, it's that feeling of magic, that smooth ride, that keeps us trying over and over again. But sometimes it just doesn't work. And that's, for me at least, when the voices start to pop back up. Are you sure you're a good writer? Are you sure anybody wants to read this stuff? Is this really what you should be doing? Isn't this boring? You've written books already. Why is anybody going to want to read this one? And you know, those voices have this disturbing tendency to grow in volume. And so they'll start low and quiet. But as time goes on, as I try to ignore them, they'll just sort of get louder and louder and louder. And sometimes they're not even talking about me and my writing. Sometimes it's just, why does this book feel so long? Why is it so hard to get through these words? Wouldn't it be better to just go and do something else with your time? And those are the voices that I think can be the most damaging. Because writing can be improved. I can write something and admit that it's not very good, but then I can go back and edit it, and I can make it better. And I can give it to other people, and they can edit it. But when the voice starts attacking my motivation to actually sit down and write, because I don't feel like I'm making progress, because I feel like it's pointless, because I feel like whatever I write just isn't going to be good, that's when things really can get dangerous. That's when those feelings of overwhelm can really start to set in for me. So what do I do about it? Because at the end of the day, you know, the fact that I'm still here, still writing, I was just talking to somebody the other day, and I realized it has been 3 years since I became a full-time writer, which means it has been 5 years, 6 years, which means that it's been 6 years since I started writing. And the fact that I'm still here, I think, is really important, because it gives lie to the voice. Whether or not the story that I'm working on is going to be a masterpiece or not, I know that it's better than the stuff I started with. I know that my writing has improved. I know that if I just keep showing up every day, that I'm going to finish. I mean, I have 30-some books to prove it. Books that were written one word at a time, because that's how you write books. And so when I'm in that state of overwhelm, of feeling like everything is just too much, and I can't keep writing, it's helpful to remember that. It's helpful to put into perspective what is true and what is not true. What is true is that my writing is better than it was. What is true is that if I just sit down and write, I will make progress towards my goal. What is true is that if I am feeling overwhelmed by what I'm trying to do, I can just break it down into smaller steps. What's true is that I can clarify my goals and objectives one at a time. What's true is that I don't have to be good at writing, because I can improve. And I've demonstrated that over time. What's true is that if I just tackle one small thing, if I just write one sentence, if I just pick one scene, if I just write a few hundred words, that's okay. As long as I keep going. See, that's the big danger of being overwhelmed, is that we stop. Stephen Pressfield, in his book, The War of Art, talks about resistance as an opposite force to the muse. This sort of cosmic, suppressive entity that wants to keep our creativity from shining through. I don't really buy into the sort of spiritual language that he uses to discuss the muse and the resistance, but I do think he's onto something. And I think he's describing this universal experience that we have where we, for all sorts of reasons, just have trouble starting, just have trouble beginning to write. And so that's where I am. I'm in the midst of that resistance. I'm in the midst of just this unbelievable weight where every time I try and sit down and write, my brain is like, hey, how about not? How about I throw things at you so fast that there's too much for you to do? All while having that little nagging voice in the back shouting about how this probably isn't a good idea anyways. You probably shouldn't even be doing this. But that's okay. Because I've been here before. And I'll be here again. This isn't the last time I'm going to be in this state. See, if you're a writer, then you probably know this all too well. And if you haven't experienced it yet, you're going to. This is a stage. This is a piece of creativity. And it's unbelievably uncomfortable. And I would love for it to be over as soon as possible. But there's also something really magical that happens in this space. This is where true creativity is catalyzed. This is where words start to coalesce in a way that they couldn't if you didn't have a bit of this angst and frustration in your life. Every single time that I've been in this position, it has been uncomfortable, and this time is no different. But that's okay, because I always come out of it. There's always a peak after the valley. You don't stay down here forever. And I think that's really important to have that perspective, because sometimes it feels like today is going to be the same as tomorrow, which is going to be the same as the day after that. But, and I'm sure you've heard me say this before if you've watched my videos, the only true constant is that nothing is constant. Everything changes. And so tomorrow is not going to be the same as today. Tomorrow is going to be better than today, because I'm going to learn and I'm going to grow, and I'm going to do my best to deal with this state of overwhelm, and I'm going to try to continue writing, and I'm going to work on paring things down, getting back to the small unit, focusing on writing just a little bit to continue walking forward. I wish I could say that writing was all sunshine and roses, and that a creative life is just endlessly fulfilling. But no, sometimes it sucks. And for whatever reason, I'm now in that place. You know? And it sucks. But that's okay. This isn't meant to be a depressing video, though it probably is. It's more just a video to be real and to talk about where I am. You know, I'm going to move back to this high intensity writing because I want to, because I'm excited about doing it, and I'm going to get back there, right? I'm just not there right now. And I think it's important, you know, to help everybody understand that that's okay. This is part of life too. Just because I go through periods of being able to write at this really high production pace doesn't mean I'm always going to stay there. And these periods of lower production or no production are actually often the fuel that allow me to stay in high production mode longer. This last period of 3 months was the longest I've ever done it, the most successful I've ever been. And so I'm really excited because I think my next cycle of this is going to be equally good, if not better. I'm going to take what I have learned during this lower and slower period. I'm going to be more effective at fighting the voices in my head that tell me that I'm a bad creative. I'm going to be more effective at fighting through overwhelm. I'm going to be more effective at being able to maintain the level of production that I want. This isn't supposed to be a depressing video. If anything, this should encourage you, because even when we have bad days and bad weeks and bad months, it's okay. We will walk out the other side.